talking about covert narcissism. I've been talking about that in a couple recent videos. And the reason it is so important to me is because it really strikes a chord with me in the research I've done and the studying I've done on narcissism over the last couple of years. I've learned that there are different types of narcissists. There's subcategories, and narcissism is a personality disorder, as my therapist a couple years ago called it, a bend in personality. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not a professional. I don't have a degree. I'm just your average Joe that has, or average Sally, that has done a lot of research and is a recovered scapegoated child from a very toxic and unhealthy home. And I am one of 8 people in my home, and my parents stayed married for 40 years prior to getting divorced. But I got started on the topic, or studying the topic, of covert narcissism in particular, despite having learned over the last couple of years about all these different kinds of narcissists, overt or grandiose narcissists and malignant narcissists, and this interchangeably worded vulnerable or covert narcissist. I choose to use the word exclusively now, covert narcissist. And in my prior videos, you may have heard me reference vulnerable narcissism, primarily because I didn't really know what it was. I had very little information about it, and so I use them interchangeably. And I used to not really be 100% sure about what a covert or vulnerable narcissist was, and now I have a much better understanding. And it's much easier for my own understanding to use the word covert narcissist than vulnerable, because as I was getting healthy and doing a bunch of research, I came to believe that vulnerable equated to sensitive or emotional. And that is obviously, if you know anything about narcissism, which I'm sure you do if you're watching this video, the furthest thing from the truth, and not at all applicable to anyone who is highly narcissistic. So I took the word vulnerable right out of the equation and just said covert. For me, it wasn't, and I never understood or associated coversion with sly or more of a malignant narcissistic tendency. What I think of when I hear covert narcissist is difficult to detect. And for me, that is 100% applicable. And that is what the professionals indicate is the primary reason for the name covert narcissist. But a lot of professionals and even unprofessionals use vulnerable and covert interchangeably. I, for the purposes of this video and probably moving forward, will exclusively use the term covert narcissism. And the reason that I got started studying this topic, and specifically covert narcissism compared to other subtypes of narcissists, is because of the studying and research that I did on my mom about borderline personality disorder, because researchers and professionals have found a direct correlation between romantic relationships of people with borderline personality disorder and narcissists. And the more research I did and the more studying I did, the more I discovered that they're saying that it is very common and likely that if you have a covert narcissist in a relationship, it's likely that their partner has borderline personality disorder and vice versa, because it's so common and professionals are seeing it so much. Now, as always, that's not going to be the case in every situation. So please, here's my disclaimer, do your research. You know, that's what got me started on this, is I was curious about my mom growing up, what her problem is. She refuses to get help. She refuses to change anything about herself, admit that there's anything wrong with her that she could improve on. Everybody in my family is stubbornly stuck in this mentality of there is absolutely nothing wrong with us. I'm the problem. Me, specifically, Anne. I have been told that I'm crazy, that I'm oversensitive, that I take offense at everything, that I have all these problems, and they couldn't be more incorrect. They couldn't be more wrong. The problem is that, as I've found, and I've attempted to talk to a few members of my family about this very lightly a long time ago when I first got into counseling, and quickly learned it was a moot point. It wasn't going to change the situation. So I've had to go through this whole acceptance phase of the situation in my family. The truth of the matter that I've discovered is that I'm actually the scapegoated child of 6 children. My oldest brother is a grandiose, overt narcissist, like in your face. And all my siblings and I, we've always known there's something wrong with him. There's something not right about him. But we've never been able to figure it out. We just thought that's the way he is. He's different. He's special. Well, narcissists are special, right? And then my second oldest brother, bear with me just one second. It's getting kind of warm in my car. Even though it's chilly outside, I want to turn my car off for a minute and just give it a rest. So normally I would be very wary and cautious about throwing out what sounds like a diagnosis of somebody when I am not a doctor or a licensed professional. But I am a former victim, and I've also done lots of research. But in the case of my oldest brother, I don't hold any hesitation whatsoever in referring to him as a grandiose narcissist, because I have actually felt so confident that he is a narcissist and has this personality disorder or personality bend, as my counselor would say, that I have went to the DSM-5 myself and reviewed all of the scientific material in that book related to different personality disorders. And one of the things that I did with him was I was able to rule out several different personality disorders like bipolar. But while I was reading about all the different characteristics that a narcissist has to have in order to be diagnosed by a professional, there's like 9 characteristics, and they only have to meet the standards for, I think, 5 of the 9 characteristics. I discovered that my oldest brother meets all 9 criteria, all 9 characteristics. I emphatically could say, as I was reading through all of this information in the DSM-5, that my brother has all 9 traits of a narcissist. So I refer to my oldest brother as having narcissistic personality disorder. Now, the rest of my siblings, I'm not sure about. My older brother, because I have 2 older brothers, the oldest is NPD. The second oldest I would refer to as the golden child. I am the scapegoat. The next child in line is my sister, and she's younger than me by 4 years, and she is the lost child. And then I have 2 younger brothers younger than my sister, and I have yet to determine what their role is in our unhealthy family, but the 4 oldest children have definitive roles. But I'm still learning, and I still have a long way to go. My focus has been on understanding my mom. I lost my dad in January of 2023. I was fortunate enough to find forgiveness towards him before he died, and he and I were both at peace. He had no awareness of himself, and I think he knew deep down inside that something wasn't right between the two of us. And I think he knew towards the end of his life, deep down inside, that he owned at least a part of the problems within our family, but he would never ever admit to it. He blamed everybody for everything that could possibly have gone wrong in his life, but he rarely ever admitted that anything was wrong. So that's where we get to the covert narcissism. I started studying my mom and discovered that she potentially has borderline personality disorder. I will never know, though, because she refuses to get help. She meets all the criteria for borderline personality disorder, with the exception of one. I think there was one in there as I was studying it. You can go back and watch my other videos about borderline to review that. But as I was studying borderline, I discovered there was this really distinct correlation between covert narcissism and borderline personality relationships. And as I did more and more research on these 2 personality disorders in a relationship, I discovered my parents and what was wrong with their relationship from the beginning. Because when I was really little, for the first few years of their marriage, things were okay. I don't remember it being bad when I was little. But right around the age of 7, 6 or 7, I would say, because I can't really remember for sure how old I was, but from a very young age, there were problems, and they persisted throughout my growing up, throughout my childhood and my young adulthood until my parents got divorced, and even after they got divorced. So I got on this topic of covert narcissism, and now I'm obsessed with it. And here's why. Because there's certain memories I have that are so marked, and one that stands out, and I want to talk about this in particular because it is directly related to covert narcissism. Because a few characteristics of a covert narcissist that are applicable to this memory are things like the covert narcissist tendency to look outward and blame others for all of life's inconveniences and failures and disappointments, believing that if others just did what they said, if they just listened to them, then life would be perfect and there would be no problems in the world. But the narcissist knows all, and especially the covert narcissist. And the only reason a covert narcissist experiences disappointment or failures is because of everybody else who wasn't listening to what they said that they should do. Simultaneously, the covert narcissist does not own any sort of accountability or responsibility for their own bad decisions or poor choices, or how they may have played a role in the effect or outcome of any given situation. Their belief is that others are just difficult to work with or don't understand or are stupid. Covert narcissists just simply do not understand that people are different and separate and have their own opinions and thoughts and positions in life, and they don't talk. They don't discuss, they don't compromise. There's no meeting in the middle with a covert narcissist. Generally, it's black or white. And that's why the covert narcissist works so well with a borderline, because a borderline also thinks very black and white. Everything's either all good or all bad. There's no in between. But I'm not going to get into that in this video. What I want to get into in this video is my dad and my experience. Recently, we spread his ashes. My family of origin, my siblings and nieces and nephews and such went and spread my dad's ashes at his formerly owned cabin on 10 acres out in the wilderness, where about 2-3 hours from where we grew up. It's a part of our past and our childhoods. We've all spent a great deal of time there. It's a property that his parents built in the 70s by hand on a river, and my dad bought it out of their estate, out of his parents' estate when they passed away. And how my dad dealt with the cabin and his estate when it came time for him to leave this earth. Now, a little bit of history. My dad, for probably 15 years now, has been using this property, in my opinion, as leverage with his kids to try to establish or maintain a relationship with them. He has been using this cabin because he knows that we all love it. We all love to spend time there. And there's 6 of us with our respective families that would all be interested in purchasing the property from him. So he has, for a very long time, been periodically asking each one of us in private conversation who might be interested in purchasing it and who could afford it. And those are 2 very different things. Every single sibling in my family was interested in purchasing the cabin. There's about 2 or 3 of us that could actually afford it. I couldn't. My husband and I were definitely interested in buying, but we couldn't afford buying it for most of that 15 years. I've never been able to afford purchasing that property. Then me and my husband reached a point in our marriage and in our lives where we got financially stable, and it's only been a couple of years where my husband and I have really felt financially secure. So in the last couple of years, when my dad has asked us, me in particular, about the cabin, me knowing that that was going to happen, I have said to him, yes, I'm interested, and if you're serious, we definitely want to talk cold hard cash and get it signed on the dotted line, because if you want to unload the cabin, you want to get it out of the estate and you're ready, I'm telling you, we're ready. So we had a conversation in the summer of 2021 where my dad, and these conversations have been going on for years and nothing ever came of it. Keeping that in mind, in the summer of 2021, my husband and I were over visiting my dad one afternoon when he brought up the cabin again. And this, keep in mind, was also coinciding with, I think I had been in counseling by that time, because I got into counseling in June of 2020. by the summer of 2021, I was well into this mode of setting healthy boundaries, communicating better, and establishing healthy relationships. And so I didn't have a fantastic relationship with my dad. I never have. But my dad, one day when we were visiting, asked us once again if we were interested in the cabin, if we could afford it. And we said emphatically yes. Basically, to summarize, I said, I'm sick of talking about this. It's do or die. Don't keep asking everybody in the family if they want the cabin. If you want the cabin out from your estate, I'm ready to write you a check today. And he said, no, I got it. I trust you. The deal is done. The cabin's yours. I just got to wrap up some other things and we'll be done and we'll get the paperwork in order. So the visit was, pleasant and we had a good time. And then that was the understanding when we left that day. But then the next morning I woke up to be stunned by an email from him saying that not only was he grateful that we visited, but he was in no hurry to announce the sale of the cabin, which I kind of thought, okay, he's reneging. Then we had this verbal agreement. And then he made this passive aggressive statement that went, it's gonna hit like a bomb when I announce it, but oh well, shit happens. That's what he said in my email. That not only stunned me, and I thought how unnecessary for him to say it. I thought it was a rude thing to say. And it also hurt me, and I felt horrible, and I didn't understand why he said that. And I went back to my husband. I said, how do you take that? And my husband was like, I don't know. He was shocked and stunned himself and confused, understandably. Sorry about that, guys. I had to turn my car heat back on, and then the camera got knocked over, and I'm struggling here. So sorry about that little interruption there and the change in view. I had my sun visor down for privacy from other walkers and park visitors. But anyway, getting back to the video that we're talking about, my dad's cabin and the covert narcissism and this display, this tendency he had to just be manipulative and to blame others and these other characteristics of a covert narcissist. So after I got my dad's email that said, it's going to hit like a bomb when I announce the sale of the cabin, but oh well, shit happens. It's kind of this passive aggressive, completely unnecessary, especially to me, who he knew would feel horrible about that. I stewed about that. I felt like crap. And for 2 days, I stewed about it. I was heartbroken by his comment. I was confused as to why he said it or why it should matter, why it should hit like a bomb, the sale of the cabin, when it's been an issue, the sale of the cabin and getting out from his estate for years. And I had finally said, okay, here I am, a person, one of your children that is interested in buying it and can buy it. None of my other siblings were in that position. And so I was ready to make the move, and he had agreed to it verbally. And I was having an attack of consciousness after I got his email, because as I was going through therapy and learning about my past and becoming aware, I had been at this for a year, and I had an attack of consciousness that I didn't want to bring any more strife into my family of origin than we already had. If I was going to be the means of bringing strife to the family, I didn't want any part of that. So I had the discussion with my husband first, and he agreed and he understood, but he was very respectful of whatever I wanted to do, which I do appreciate. And so I called my dad and I told him that I do not want to be the means of causing heartache or anger or bringing any more resentment into our family when there was already so much there. And even as I was saying it, I couldn't believe I was saying it, because I knew that it wouldn't matter to him. And that should have been a big clue to me. That should have been, but I'm a believer of things happen for a reason. Especially once you start to get healthy and you look back on your past and you start putting the pieces of the puzzle in place. Inside, I couldn't believe I was saying it to him. I knew that I was losing the cabin and I was sobbing inside, but I knew I had to do it. It had to be done. This couldn't keep going on. That's how I felt. But the worst part of that phone conversation was his relief. His relief was marked. It was in his voice. It was in his words. It was palpable through the phone line. We were 600 miles away from each other at the time we had this phone conversation, and I could hear it in his tone. And then the next morning, I got an email from him, and I'm going to quote my dad's email because I reread it the other day in preparation for videoing this, and I just had to quote this email from him. At first, you buying the cabin was exciting and doable. Awesome. But then reality set in, and it did not sound so exciting and doable. Thank you for volunteering to withdraw in such a redeeming manner. I have such thoughtful kids, and loving you is simple, not difficult at all, and so very much appreciated. Job easier. The sale is moving forward with your sister and is so much more doable. I am confident that this is the best solution. Those are direct quotes from my dad's email to me. My dad had made a verbal promise to me and my husband to sell us the family cabin. Then he realized he might have been too hasty. I have no idea why. Still don't know. Who knows what his thought process was, honestly, or why he regretted his verbal agreement with me after 15 years of going back and forth amongst all his kids and leveraging the cabin and using it as a tool to get to us and to have a relationship with us. And then why he decided all of a sudden 24 hours later that he regretted making this verbal agreement with me after years of talking about it. And he just moves right into manipulation. Instead of just talking to us like adults in a rational manner or deciding to make a decision about the cabin as the leader and father of the house that just made the decision, instead of going that route, he resorts to manipulating me and taking advantage of me, starting with his passive aggressive comment about how me buying the cabin is going to hit the rest of the family like a bomb. Why? And, oh, well, shit happens. Like, too bad, so sad. But he doesn't look like the bad guy this way. His manipulation made his job a lot easier because he banked on my compassion, my empathy, my soft spirit, and my willingness to be kind to those who have wronged me throughout my history. He threw out the passive-aggressive comment in order to make me feel bad once he realized that he shouldn't have made the verbal agreement, instead of just having the balls to say, "Ann, you know what? I screwed up. This is probably not the best route. I don't want my relationships to suffer with my kid. I still want kids. I want to still use the cabin as leverage, blah, 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 blah." Whatever his thought process was, instead of just addressing it head on with me and matter-of-factly, logically, he resorts to this manipulation of stating this passive-aggressive comment in an email to me, which he knew would get me feeling bad. He banked on that and hoped for me to withdraw, which is exactly what I did, of course, because he's been doing this for years and has me well trained. Then, after I did withdraw, he praised me for being the scapegoat. And that's the only thing I've known my entire life, is I get an attaboy or attagirl and a high five and a big old slap on my back for being the scapegoat, for being the doormat, for being shit on by my family. Sorry, I'm getting wound up here. He expresses how easy it was to love me when I was so sacrificial, instead of just loving me regardless. If you read between the lines and you read what the inference is behind his commendation of me being the sacrificial lamb for the family, what he's not saying is how difficult and impossible I am when I do stand up on my own 2 feet and do stand up for myself and do lay down boundaries. That qualifies me to be unloved. It's only when I allow others to treat me like shit that I'm lovable. This is what I grew up with. This is what I learned. This is what brought me to this place in my life where on that triggering job experience, it was horrific. It traumatized me. I almost ended up in a mental institution, had a breakdown, and had to go into therapy even a year after I had been gone from that workplace because I was still internally so deeply wounded. It's because I was so deeply triggered on that job experience from the way I was raised, and it was happening in the workplace. My dad, the covert narcissist, never owned his own lack of leadership, his own lack of decision making, his own lack of strength, his bad decisions over the years about how to handle the cabin, or what a bad decision he made in making the verbal agreement with me in the summer of 21. He was never accountable for his own decisions. He has never been accountable for his own bad decisions or bad choices when we were growing up, and he wasn't in this case either. That is my covert narcissist dad. My dad chose to blame others in the family by saying it'll hit like a bomb, like they have issues, it's going to hit them like a bomb, but oh well, shit happens. So it's everybody else's fault that he entered into this agreement with me, this verbal agreement to buy the cabin. But as long as I did what he wanted me to do and made his job easier as a parent, as long as I succumbed or knuckled under and gave in and let people walk all over me, I was so much easier to love. That made me such a thoughtful kid. And he even said it wasn't difficult at all to love us. As a mother, I cannot comprehend at all, even the remotest difficulty in loving my child. No matter what they did, no matter how they behaved, they could murder someone and I would still love my child. I cannot even believe to this day, and honestly, this is the hurt coming out in me as I'm videoing this, to say my dad told me it's not difficult to love me as though it is any other time when I'm so sacrificial, and it's such a redeeming quality of me to withdraw and give up. You know what? It's probably for the best, because I don't want as many good memories as I have and as much enjoyment and fulfillment as I have had at that cabin in the remote wilderness where a couple hours from where we grew up. I don't want the association with my toxic, covert narcissist dad in my future or for my kids. It's not going to happen. So I'm going to take it as a blessing in disguise. And that's what a covert narcissist does to a person. And when you come out of a covert narcissist relationship of any kind, within a family, within a romantic relationship, in a workplace, friendship, whatever it is, it scars you. It hurts. But hopefully the road to recovery brings us to a place where we have more peace and not so much hurt and so many scars. Scars are still there, the wounds are still there, but as time passes and the more we focus on being healthy, the more peace we have within and the more separation we get from the toxicity we are exposed to. Hope you guys take care of yourselves. Thanks for tuning in to Whole Wellness with A. Until next time, bye.